Thank you for joining me. You're currently sitting in my Viking chair. As you can see with the stuff around me, this space has kind of turned into my workspace, my meditative space, my safe space. As I do a lot more self-exploration, this area has kind of like become the go-to space. I find it comfortable. I'm able to work in silence, or if I need the noise, I actually turn on my comfort TV shows. All we have is antenna out here, but it's some of the shows that I watched when I was younger, and they still air them on antenna TV. So it's kind of turned into my ritual space where the making happens and the thinking happens. I wasn't expecting that about this chair. When I got it, I thought, wow, that's a cool chair. And now it's become my go-to place to decompress, which is a big deal for me because I didn't until now have that type of space. And it's kind of grown into my reading corner. I have a little bookshelf where all my collection of books for this semester have accumulated, and for this packet I've read Stillness Speaks, Art and Fear, and then I've kind of jumped around in this book of Women Who Run with the Wolves and kind of picked the chapters that pertain to where I am emotionally. There's also things about women and their relationships and other things like that, but I've focused on the self from the chapters that spoke to me and where I want to focus my energy. Specifically, chapter 10 focuses on creativity, and I'll get into that and when I show the book that I made for it. But I keep coming back to this book, as well as where I was in the beginning of this month. I was stuck. I didn't know where to start, and my brain was like, just start making, but I couldn't move. So I started reading, and books or things happen when they're meant to. And I do wish I'd found this book when I was younger. It may have helped me work through some of the, things that this talks about, but I'm glad I read it now. And I made a book with key takeaways from this that I'll thumb through here in a moment. But this book resonated in the sense of it was comforting to know that I'm not the only one, but it was also calling me out of my shit. So it was meant to be read right now. And then when it comes to this book, sitting in the quiet, sitting in stillness is still a challenge, but I do feel the more I do it, the easier it'll get. This book focuses on, that battle between the ego and yourself, and being aware and being able to identify that voice that is yourself versus the ego. And fear fuels, which is connection to this, fear fuels that ego. And I've been trying to sit in my stillness and sit in the quiet and reflect and decompress throughout the day or throughout the weeks. And to get into that and be more consistent with it, I found that drawing helps. And so I've started drawing sigils. And sigils, that word can throw some people off because of witchcraft and stuff like that. But for me, it's symbolism that represents what I'm trying to manifest within my actions, what I'm trying to manifest within my work and my daily life. So I'm using this little notebook to draw those sigils, and I have a couple more of these that I want to fill up this semester, but I just started drawing. And I'm not dating the pages, but I am keeping track of the months and the year of when the books were filled. So I started this one in February, and I saved a couple pages for next week. But this book in particular came from Clamp It Paper, where I drove to Dallas to visit Whitney. Shout out to Whitney. I got to sit in on one of her classes at the UNT, and then we went around to different art shops and saw Dallas a little bit and stopped at Clamp It Paper, where they actually have a resource room full of paper samples, like 3,000 cubbies and all sorts of different stuff in their showroom that I got to thumb through as far as researching paper and what kind of paper I can use in print and bookmaking. So this little notebook came from that. And I intentionally used a pen to draw on this. I didn't want to worry about erasing or making wrong marks. I want whatever marks came out to intentionally stay on the page. And you'll see I've been using words as well as just drawing whatever came to me. When I draw the words, those words are what's sitting in my mind in that moment and what I'm trying to focus on. So I'll write the word, I'll cross out all the vowels and any repeating letters, and then whatever's left, I use that to draw the symbol for that word. And there's no wrong way to do it, but the other day I was drawing and it made me think I could design a little pamphlet or zine or booklet that may have a list of words for people to sit and resonate with, kind of like those destructive journals, you know, that people buy to, and it has a drawing prompt or a direction to tear up this page and stuff like that. So that's kind of like on the to-do list of what I could design to share with others from this. And sometimes I would end up drawing things that are in my room, or I typically sit with my knees up in the chair because it's big enough to where I could sit comfortably like that, and being tall, that's a rare find in a chair. This I actually have a little clay sculpture, and then I started drawing a Triton for whatever reason, but it's actually a candle that sits on top of that little rose. And some things like this, I was drawing the folds in the blanket that was laying at my feet, and then drew my feet, and it came out to be this really cool, organic, almost floral shape. And you'll see some symbols are repeated, like I've been drawing a lot of swirls and infinity symbols, but also flames. And my feet, kind of the last couple weeks I've been thinking about my feet, and then also as in terms of grounding, and then also just upwardness, like moving up. But these are the last couple days, and I want to start focusing on one or two and not necessarily drawing a bunch of symbols like you see here, but like focusing in on one thing or two things that resonate with me within that moment to try to get further into that stillness. And then this came out pretty cool. As you can see, the stuff around me, that's all the stuff I've been using to make, or, you know, do the bookmaking for this packet, as well as read and draw or whatever around me. So the other day, while it was all strode out, I was sitting in my chair just thinking and reflecting. I ended up drawing circles of everything that was around me, and it kind of turned into this really cool mushroom shape, because I typically sit with my legs crossed as well. And so I was drawing that. This says community. It may be hard to read. And these are the last few days. This is actually stemmed from a drawing prompt with my pod, is what we call it ourselves. We're the pod, but my group of friends, we do drawing prompts geared around art therapy, which is my best friend, she's majoring in, so she has this list that we share in the group. And the prompt for this was draw the heart of a cloud, and we didn't know what that was, but then it just hit me to focus on just making marks. The inner part of a cloud, to me, is represented by a teardrop, and then these dashes are kind of like all the moisture. And then if you've ever observed the way lightning moves through a cloud, that's where this kind of thought process came from. And then also the roots of a tree kind of made me think of that, like that connection of how roots grow and how they look, and then how lightning can look in the sky. It's very similar. So that connection between sky and earth. But these last couple of pages I'll fill up later on. I also got into some junk journaling, and I used the Z fold, similar to the zine I made last semester, to do this. And I did some process art for the backgrounds, just painting each section, not necessarily with a color scheme, but some colors are repeated. And just making whatever marks resonated with those colors I had in the moment. And then I thumbed through a ton of magazines that I've accumulated over the past year from a mailing list that I somehow got on. And it's mostly designer magazines, specifically Esquire, and one called The W, and then another one called The Bazaar. So that's where most of these images come from. And as I was thumbing through them, all these designer bags were popping out, and I was like, these all look like creatures, or like I was originally singing just birds, but I wanted to push it further past birds. This one turned into an ostrich, and then it has some goofy character dogs, armadillo, butterfly, jellyfish, and this is Master Splinter, which is one of my favorite characters, and it was really fun to be playful in this way with images or photographs of objects that you wouldn't normally see what I saw within them. And this book is interactive, where I have a pull-out. So this is two-sided. This side is accumulations of scraps from all the pages within this book. And then on the other side, when you flip the page, it's actually a little pouch where it holds some tea bags. And those tea bags are from moments when I was sitting in my chair reflecting. So you can open it and pull out the tea bags inside. And this is kind of like a tribute to my chair and sitting and in my peace and in my silence. And the book Stillness Speaks kind of talks about how creativity comes from silence. So kind of wanted to give that tribute to the space that I've created for myself, as well as a tribute to the hair that I've been documenting. This is kind of puzzled together woven hair from different women, and it's intentionally long and interwoven in a way to tribute to the fact that we're all connected. The wild woman from the book Women Who Run with the Wolves kind of connects all of us, and the energy that females hold. So this is my tribute to that. And then this one is kind of like a release of frustration and anger, and also like just saying fuck you to, you know, all the fear from what people think, and realizing that I don't need to hold on to that. I need to let it go and focus on who I am and letting that resonate outward. So free and fighting for herself. I really loved this image, and the fact that it was in a magazine, I wasn't expecting that. It's pretty cool. This one is a little flip where it says news flash, and you have to flip them in a certain order. And truly, madly, deeply. And then once you flip all the gloves or hands, you have this last one, and it says me. And I found it funny the other day. I was listening to my playlist, and Savage Garden came on, and they have a song, Truly, Madly, Deeply. So I was like, well, that's me, even though that's a love song. And then this is actually where I started. It's in the back of the book, but these 2 pages are where I started in building this thing. And I feel like I have a lot of strength, and I kind of, you know, can put up that front of being hard or strong to where I don't need anyone. And while I'm acknowledging that, I also want to acknowledge the beauty of being a woman. And you can have both. You just have to have balance, because there are times where you have to have that strength and, you know, be defensive towards anything that might be causing you harm. But there's also those times where you have to let that armor fall away and embrace that beauty that's in yourself and let others see it and share it with them. So this one is a reminder to be that badass woman, and then this one is a reminder of letting that armor fall away and revealing that diamond that's inside of us. So that's my junk journal, and I intentionally didn't put a cover on the front or back because I have more paper bags, and I think I want to add to it just as a thing for me. I don't necessarily want to put a title on it, but once I have like 2 or 3 more like put together, I'll probably design a cover for it. And then once I got into that, I kind of did a conceptual piece. I started this with the idea that the stitches represent words, and originally it was just going to be each stitch is a word and it fills the whole thing, but then I was like, it could look like sentences and have spaces based on paragraphs, the way you see it in a book. But I was already halfway through it before I was like, you should write something for it to represent. So this one is just an example. It says nothing. But the idea is where the paragraph is, and then it breaks and it's a new paragraph, and it's front and back. And the idea is this is what the world sees of who I am, or whoever this might represent. And then the chaos of a creative, that's our brain. So I felt like this is kind of an expressive piece of what a book could be, and the threads inside are all jumbled and don't make sense, and they're all tied and knotted, and there's crisscrossing and mistakes and all that stuff, where the outside it's clean and crisp, and there's some slight imperfections, but no one truly sees what the chaos that goes on inside a creative mind, or someone who struggles with mental health, or struggling with being themselves, that type of thing. So this was just a expressive art book style piece. Took forever to stitch. But I do want to say the stitching and the making holes and assembling of these books is therapeutic in its own making. Like, it's healing in the sense of movement and your brain letting go of tension through that making process. And once I got into that, I started thinking of ways I could use the paper that I've already made. Last semester I made paper from my old teacher notes, and I wanted whatever I did with them to be something that's beautiful, as an ode to my love for teaching, but also used in a way that the beauty overpowers that negative energy that was on those pages before I destroyed them. So I used a crown fold binding for this, and the first page contains seeds, and these are I used this method for this because I didn't want to glue these pages together. One, it would warp the paper in a way that I probably couldn't fix because it is so sensitive or delicate. And also, you can give these pieces away. These pages can be given away. And I also like to be able to see the back, because some of them had some bleed through, and that in its own way is its own piece of art. But I had some dried flowers, so they were already falling apart, and I was like, how can I use them on this paper? And I tried to do some printmaking with the flowers, and I got some of it to be successful, but it wasn't readable enough as a flower, so that's why I included the petals within this piece. But then I was like, I could do both. So I ended up, like, every other page is a print, and the other ones play with negative space a little bit more. This was just like some baby's breath that I printed. And then, again, playing with negative space, the flowers that were more durable, I glued to the pages. And then some of them, like this one, the more I printed with the flower, the more it deteriorated. And I thought that was so cool. So I was sure to include what was left of the flower. And it made me think of, you know, the more you wear yourself out, the less of you there is left. So being mindful that you need to hold space for yourself. That's where the thought process came in including this piece. And this one is a little fragile. The binding I want to redo. That's why it doesn't have a cover yet. I got to thinking about it. I made 3 of them. And I was like, why can't I get these measurements right? And this one was almost right. I just needed to add another 1/2 inch. So I will be making another binding for this, which is the beauty of this binding, is you can, you know, try again. And I started with cardstock, but it was too thick and hefty, and the bend was cracking the paper because of the long grain versus short grain aspect of it. So this is scrapbooking paper, which folds very nicely for this type of binding. So I'll be making another one to fit this a little bit better, because my fix for this was just fold it less, and it's not holding it as securely. It's holding it, it's just over time, the more this gets used, I don't think it would hold it as well. But this is, you know, part of the learning, especially with something new. And this one, I just dropped the flowers wherever they landed, which was fun to watch. And for me, this one says Pac-Man. It was the back end of a sunflower, but I thought it was comical in that way. And then whoever looks at it can see whatever they wish to see. And then we close with this. So that was another artist book. And then I got into my more technical bookmaking. So I did some perfect bound, made some dummy books, which I'll probably fill with sigils once I fill up my Clampett books. I used the whole idea of all of this was using what I have without having to buy things. So using up what I've collected is a big focus for my making at this time, and I have so much paper that it makes no sense to buy more. So I used some lined paper that we've had for years in the cabinet to start out my binding journey, as well as some construction paper. And I don't want them to just sit there and not be used, so, you know, notebook, and then some sort of drawing, but like I said, probably my sigils. And this one is the Coptic stitch combined with the French loop stitch, and that was fun. I discovered, this being the first time I was stitching, the thread with the needle is like near impossible to pull through the hole, like where it knots up at the end. So I've started getting a little bit bigger on the hole for the needle to go through. And the last book I made, which is my packet itself, came out a little bit cleaner. So, and then I ended up doing a flutter and a concertina or accordion book, again using what I had. This one I ended up taping the pages, and I want to do something with lines, like following the length of the line on the paper. I did the lines up and down intentionally to kind of maybe play with color or pattern in some way. And then this one I used note cards and a cracker box to build it, gluing the pages together. It kind of creates a cool fold, and I glued it to where you would use the clear or the blank pages instead of the lines. But the lines still showed through, so they could, you know, be used to assist with patterns or something like that. And it came out cleaner than I thought it would, given that I was using, you know, essentially recycled materials. And then I got into my official books, I guess you could call them. I made a key takeaways book for Art and Fear, and I designed each page kind of like a text exercise, and then we have a change stitch for the binding. I printed this out on a printer that I just bought just over a week ago and returned yesterday. It was a battle to get anything printed on it, and it didn't matter what setting I had. I felt like it was distributing way too much ink, like too dark or just too saturated to where the images were not sharp, but it was also jamming, and it also was doing ink splatter when it was supposed to have, you know, that borderless feature to it. So live and learn, gonna do some more research on the printer, and thankfully I have a community that's willing to help me in the meantime for, you know, any printmaking I do in the future. But this is round one of my key takeaways. I'd like to make a more official, like, fix mistakes, because there's one typo in here, and my mom pointed it out, nobody else did, and I was like, how dare you, as soon as I finish this, point out my typo. But I'm a designer, not a speller, so. But I glued the cover to a piece of cardstock, and learning more about the fold, you know, the grain of how paper is made, I'm learning that long and short grain, there's mostly long grain paper, to where when I need the short grain to be folding, I don't have any paper that has a short grain fold to it. So I am trying to be more mindful of my size, like how wide something needs to be to where it fits the way the paper's designed to fold, if that makes sense. But this is my tribute to the book, and then each page is key takeaways, and it's either a direct quote or my paraphrasing of what I got from the book. And I try to be thorough and going through the whole book. There's like 32, I think, takeaways here. But there can be a love-hate for inspiration. That's more of my takeaway, my interpretation, the love-hate part. Because inspiration is great to generate those ideas. But then, like this month, the ideas would not stop, to where I was frozen. I was paralyzed, and I didn't know where to start. And I still have some of that I'm working through right now, but the reading helped kickstart where to go within the making. And now I'm at a point where I'm excited about the next packet to work with combining my new learned skills, as well as some printmaking and some interactive 3D work. Don't know what that looks like yet, other than I'd like to learn more about paper folding and pop-up books. But yeah, failure is essential, I think, is a good reminder, and I wanted it to fill the whole page and kind of look intentional as far as like getting cropped off, which I was trained that's a no-no, so I did it on purpose to remind myself that you need to be breaking the rules. Imperfection is an essential ingredient. Perfection denies humanity. Being obsessed with perfectionism for as long as I can remember, it's something it's harder to break than I realized, but I'm learning to let certain things go. Like this book itself has quite a few imperfections. The paper I used again what I had. One side is a matte coat, and then the other side, as you can see, it's not as vibrant because it's only one side coated. And I had too much of that paper to not use it. So whenever I use it up, I'll get proper paper, or a better paper. This is good paper. A paper that is two-sided, coated on both sides. But I really do like the matte finish. And then I love spaghetti westerns. So reading that book and thinking about the 90s when it was written and the design that drew me into graphic design is where the layout inspiration comes from this book. So I loved bold text. Spaghetti westerns kind of influenced some of my grungy art making style, and I still don't know what my style is yet, but I do feel like this layout or this approach to it with the halftones and playing with effects and stuff is in the right direction of what I feel like I enjoy making and doing. Giving space to respond authentically. I kind of struggle with that word because what does it really mean? Yes, being your truest self, but I don't even really know how to put that into words. I just remember reading from A Man and His Symbols how being your authentic self kind of separates you from people. Like you're not connected. Like it's choosing yourself, but you're rejecting your community, which is not the right way to word it. I need to, reflect further on that thought process. But after reading that from Man and His Symbols last semester, when I hear people say be your authentic self, I question like it's true, like positivity that people take from it. Like, yes, be your truest self, but don't be cruel in the way that you do it, or something like that. And again, I need to reflect more on it. But finding your community, I've worked hard to build that for myself, especially in the area I live. There's very little. And the art community that is there, some of them, it's too political for my taste. But learning how not to quit, it made a good point of, as a student, you have that drive to create based on a grade. Like your goal is to get that credit on your transcript. And after that, a lot of people, if they don't, go into a job that's art focused, they just stop making. I don't feel like that will ever be me. I think I will always be making, and it doesn't have to have a reason, like doing a doodle or just like a small piece of art. I feel like I will always be doing that, so I don't think quit is in my nature for art making. But I do like the point that it made as far as like artists or creatives tend to fall into teaching roles because you're surrounded by that creative energy, and it kind of influences or keeps you in the making world. Versus if I were to be working in a dentist office, would I be making art? I don't know. So it made good points about that. And then uncertainty, that's a big one that I struggle with. Uncertainty is a virtue is what the book argues, and I agree. The way it was worded and the way it justified it and all that, I feel like it it's true and it's scary, and you don't necessarily want to feel that fear when you're trying something new, but you have to get through it. Like, choosing uncertainty is where new things happen. Like, if you stay in your comfort zone, you don't really grow. So trying to branch into that mindset of choosing uncertainty and, facing fears. Materials are reliable. They do what the hands make them do. I really enjoyed that point it made about materials, because it made me think about all the things that I have and what I'm able to make with what I have. I'm very grateful for the collection I've made through the years, and I feel like it's one way of, like, the materials that I have a way of influencing what I make, but I'm in control of them, and I just like that how diverse I can be with my materials. And just a critique on myself, I would want to adjust this a little bit. It doesn't read as well as what I was thinking. Art is honest. I was thinking as far as like a scale, because art is what you put into it. I need to move it down just a bit, because it may not read as well as I was hoping it would to a viewer who doesn't know what it's supposed to say. And then, courage turns naive passion into informed passion, where the maker has accepted the obstacles and pushes forward anyway. It's scary, but do it anyway. Push forward and work past that fear, and the outcome could be, something unexpected that, leads to growth, and you're finding pride within your work and your voice. So I try to think about the word courage a lot, not just from this book, but just it's been a word that's shown up a few times for me. Acceptance and approval are not the same thing. Acceptance is recognition that that's your work, and whereas approval is whether or not it's liked by others. And I never made that connection. To me, they were synonyms, and this book pointed those two things out, and I was like, you're right. And so figuring out what my work is, because it also talks about, people bash you for copying, whereas like in Eastern cultures, it's considered honorable to copy the masters. In our culture, it's condemned. So working through where copying leads to your own style. And another point this book makes was habit is style. And while I was reading this book, I was thinking about my habits, and I've made some changes, I'm proud to say, as far as like consistent making the last few weeks. That's hard for me to do without, feeling burnout. And I think the motivation came from learning something new as far as the book making. But reading this book really helped me work through that stuck moment where I can push forward. And then chapter 10 of Women Who Run with the Wolves, again, is about creativity. There's 3 different stories within that chapter, but I focused on the one about the woman who they refer to as La Llorona. And the story is about a woman, a poor, beautiful woman, who falls in love with this man, have 2 sons together, but he never married her. And so he says he's going back to Spain to marry this rich woman that his family has organized and take the 2 sons. And she just goes mad. She claws her face, claws his face, and then takes her sons to the river. She throws them into the river, and then she just dies from grief and pain. And when she gets to heaven, they tell her she can come because she has suffered, but before she can enter the gates, she has to go back to the river to find her sons. So she is there clawing through the river with her hair, trying to find her sons. And then it's kind of like a spooky story to tell children, because towards the end they say never let your kids go near the river because she may mistake them as hers and take them. But essentially, she is the river. La Llorona is the river, and the Hidalgo, the rich Hidalgo, is the animus of the river, and the animus is the masculine energy that's meant to take care of the river. And if that element of yourself is toxic, then the river is toxic, and it's up to you to cleanse that river and claim yourself again. So that is the idea behind chapter 10 as far as creativity. It's up to you to clean that river so that creativity can flow again. So I did a few iterations of it. This one I was just playing with line, and this is again a crown fold. I actually ended up using the crown folds that didn't work for my flower book, and so I made this to the size of the crown fold so I wouldn't mess it up again, so it would fit. But it's basically a continuous line. This one kind of has that digital look to it, and I really liked how the effect in Illustrator manipulated the blend of the lines that I had going. And if you pay attention to how the lines are flowing, it's two groups of lines interweaving with each other. And then by the end, the more chaotic line falls away and you're left with this cleaner line, which to me in my mind is the cleansing of the river. And so I did this with a couple iterations. So this is the plain black and white, and then this one I didn't want to fold the pages, so it's meant to look sculptural and displayed to where you turn it to read and everything. But it's again that continuous line, and I played with transparency with it as well. And then the second one is more chaotic, to where it enters the river, which is Hidalgo meeting the woman, and it's chaotic, and there's moments of clarity where she realizes she needs to what he's doing is wrong and she needs to make change. And even though the story is sad and intense, by the end she's cleansing the river, trying to find her sons and work through that pain. And so by the end of it, the toxic part has separated from the river, and so that's us cleansing our river so that creativity can flow. And so that idea is carried through. And then yesterday I just started painting. I made another copy of that, and it ended up darker than I initially wanted, and I'm going to end up stitching this one together instead. But I just use watercolors and watercolor pencils to create a more river illustration. And then I really like the haziness that the watercolors did with the ink for the toxic part that's going in and out, so I left that part alone. And I can really see like some sort of foiling happening within these pages. I just don't have the means to do that foiling, and I'm afraid to put a silver or gold ink pen to it because those are not consistent lines. Like, they break, they're not clean lines, to where I would want to risk it. But that's the third iteration, and I'm thinking I'm going to stitch it to where it looks like it's connected where the rivers connect. So that's an in-progress piece. And then I think my 2 packets, yes. So packet 1, I did a perfect binding on, and I know I'm behind on that, sending it off, but it came out quite nice, and I had to hand cut every single page. On everything I made, I hand cut the pages, because when you put it through the printer, and it bothers me so much that you can't make these tweaks on a home printer, but the printer, the registration of the crop marks were not lining up. It was like over 2 millimeters off on either side, and then when you would line up the pages, like stack the pages together, the crops were not in the same place there, so I had to cut each individual page for these books. And I ended up going back through this one and adding some bleed to some of the pages, so I feel like it came out better as far as like a tangible piece of my collection of experiences. And then I was quite happy with how the binding came out, because it looks crispy, like the fold and everything. And while I did have to fold against the long grain, this paper feels pretty durable, and the crease came out nice and smooth. So I'm happy with this as far as like my first official perfect binding. And then I did the Noble stitch, which is a Japanese stitch for this second packet, and I think it looks quite beautiful. on the outside. The only drawback to this type of binding is you can't open the book as much. So it, you kind of have to like force it open. And so I intentionally set up the pages to have the artwork away from the center to where you can push open the book. And while it's still new, the pages are gonna, you have to kind of force it open. But I think it came out nice as far as assembling and the color choices. I'm really drawn to pink right now. And I feel like pink is a color that represents strength, love, beauty, all these things that can be encompassed within the female self. And even though there's certain shades that are not my favorite, I found the high contrast of like a neon or hot pink stands out really well in my head as far as like a color that I resonate strongly with. I don't think a blush pink would read as well for me as far as an energy that I would want to associate with. So the strong heightened color of a hot pink is what I went with for this packet, since this is the response to packet 1 for, the making from the experiences. And you'll see that some pages are brighter than others because this is that same paper that is two-sided, to where one side is coated to where the colors show up nicely, and then the other side's not coated. And you'll see some imperfections because the printer did the ink splotching where it should not have. And there was no way to fix that. So I'm going back to the drawing board on the printer, but I am happy with the making as far as what I had control of. And then as I go into packet 3, I did these sketches at the beginning of the month, but I couldn't move into it. I was stuck. And I didn't know what to do. Like, I had these ideas, but I didn't know where to start, in the sense of it's common sense. You have this sketch, now start, cleaning it up and digitally, or, transfer it to Linocut. But my brain just couldn't move past all the ideas and steps it was coming up with for more than one idea at a time. And so now that I've worked through so much of the bookmaking and the emotional aspect, I now want to start creating message that's about female empowerment, and kind of work in some illustration in response again to the Women Who Run with the Wolves. I feel like as a cover design, this sketch right here that I did would look very nice, and then maybe some Linocut. My idea between this one was print the wolf and then cut out a shape that would have a tab that you pull up and it reveals the female figure that is kind of drawn from hair. And I've continued that idea of my connection with my hair and connection to culture, of what hair can be, female strength and beauty and power, and as well as that generational connection through our genetics and what hair holds as far as memories and things like that. And really all of these books kind of different strands of hair. And so this video is part of that idea of what form can be. Each of these ideas or responses come from a different part, but at the same time it's all together for where I am as far as exploring self and design. But now that I move into packet 3, I feel like I'll be focused on the more technical side of things and try to build up that professional aspect of portfolio more in the design world, but also creating a message that I hope resonates with female empowerment and feminism in a way that is not necessarily bashing, but more of the positive side of it. I don't want to tear anything down. I want to build something up. So working in the bookbinding in a way that's interactive and has some 3D elements to it with pop-ups and stuff like that, as well as like a product development using the hand that you see here. So this was originally just doodles of what posters I could make in response to some of the experiences I had where I felt like I was disrespected as a woman and as a person. And then I kept going back and forth. I was drawing this wolf with the teardrops of trying to figure out how I can combine shapes to create that figure, and just kept thinking about the middle finger. And so it turned into, I drew the back of my hand and then gave an almond shape to the nail, because I feel like that shape to a woman's nail just is beautiful but also strong, and kind of falls into that sense of wild, because, you know, animals with claws. And then fire keeps standing out to me, especially since we had that time where everything was frozen, and I spent 2 days doing nothing but sitting next to a fireplace and just staring at fire. So I want to use this idea to incorporate into a product line, and I didn't want it to be a floating hand, so it turned into a match, and I just went, ignite, and started making myself laugh, because it was like an aha moment where this could turn into something, and I'm very motivated in actually making it real and bringing it forward into the real world where it's tangible, and it's an item that I could easily develop and make myself. So I'm excited to get into this part of making, as well as do some more reading towards feminism, as well as start breaking into trauma informed design and what that could look like. So that is where I'm at, and I hope you enjoyed sitting in my chair, and I look forward to back at 3.